I'm CEO and co-founder of Edge, but what I want to talk to you guys about today is actually the phenomenon of blockchain cryptocurrency forks. We've had a few that have happened to us over the past year. A lot of people have no clue what the heck does it even mean to fork money. Money doesn't fork. We just kind of copy it, create a new one, compete in money. But let's talk about what exactly is a fork, see what you can do to prepare for a potentially future fork if you actually have any blockchain assets that might go through it. So what exactly is a fork? So this kind of originates from the open source world where we have what's called a code fork. Someone can just take a simple block of code, copy and paste it, and just change a few parameters. We call it a code fork. And that's what happened with the original forks of Bitcoin, the other altcoins such as Litecoin and Zcash. Those are basically what we consider to be code forks. It's just the code that changed, but the actual blockchain is completely separate, has a different distributed ledger, a different set of transactions, a different set of addresses. And that's what we've been seeing since almost the advent of Bitcoin, various code forks that turn into different chains. Now, last year, there was a lot of scalability. Actually, even today, there's a lot of debate on the scalability of Bitcoin. And many of you might have heard about SegWit, which got implemented in the Bitcoin blockchain. But there was a lot of controversy and kind of challenge in getting that implemented. The way SegWit got implemented is through what's called a soft fork. And a soft fork takes the rules of a cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrencies have various rules by which you can create a transaction and by which a transaction is valid on the network. A soft fork makes those rules effectively stricter. So what was valid before is suddenly no longer as valid. Now, a hard fork, this is the one that's most interesting. A hard fork takes the rules of a cryptocurrency and a blockchain and effectively loosens them. And this is effectively what happened when we hard forked Bitcoin Cash. And so I'll talk about a little bit about hard forks. That's kind of what I want to talk about today, because that was the big thing that happened last year with the proposal of SegWit 2x, which did not happen, Bitcoin Cash, and now a whole bunch of other hard forks that have created new currencies from Bitcoin. And potentially, we've actually seen this on other cryptocurrencies, such as Ethereum. Ethereum hard forked and created Ethereum Classic. So I'd mentioned, kind of a recap, softening the rules is what a hard fork does. And so with Bitcoin Cash, the rule that was softened was simply how big is a block? How many transactions can you fit in a block? And by increasing the block size, it changed the rules. And so why this creates a hard fork is simply that if you publish a transaction or a block that now has a bigger size, other nodes on the network won't accept it. The ones that have the old set of rules think it's invalid, while the nodes on the network that adopt the new set of rules think it is valid. That doesn't inherently create a problem. That doesn't inherently create two chains. However, it doesn't create two chains because in some cases, everybody agrees. All of the miners on the network, all of the nodes on the network just say, great, let's adopt these new set of rules. Let's make the block size bigger or change whatever rule we want. However, as we've seen in the cryptocurrency space, if there's anything we don't have, it's we don't have agreement. Pretty much everyone says, well, I don't like what you're going to do, so I'm going to stay with the kind of the norm. And so this is what causes what's called a chain split, where the ledger, while it might have a common starting point, now has a split where transactions now take two different paths. So the interesting thing about this, with a chain split, is that while everyone's transaction is the same to a certain point, after the split, we all have balances now on two different currencies. We basically got airdropped. So when Bitcoin Cash hard forked, everybody that had a certain balance on August, I believe it was 1st, 2017, now had that exact same coin balance on two different currencies. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you had the same amount of value. At the time of the fork, this other coin may have had very, very little value, maybe only in the cents. But you had the same number of coins. If you had 100 Bitcoin right before the split, you now had 100 Bitcoin Cash after the split. So that's the effect of a hard fork. Now, every transaction thereafter effectively only hits one of the chains. At the time that this was happening, there was one big concern that I want to talk about, which can happen in the future for Bitcoin or any other coin that you might hold in a wallet. And this is the concern of a replay attack. Let's talk a little bit about what exactly is a replay attack. So the best analogy is let's look at the kind of current banking system. When you want to send a transaction in the old banking system, You might want to write a check. And when you write a check, there's certain parameters of the check that make it valid, such as a signature on the bottom right and an amount in the middle on the right, and maybe your name and the amount that you want to send. That's kind of what we consider a valid check, at least in the US. When a fork happens, we have two banking systems. We effectively have the current banking system and then this new one. If the new fork doesn't change the rules of what a transaction looks like, then technically speaking, while I want to send this check into the first banking system, someone can photocopy it, literally Xerox copy it, and send it into the second banking system. What that means is I'm actually sending the two different currencies twice, even though I only wrote one check. That's what's called a replay attack. And if a cryptocurrency hard forks, this is by default a threat. You want to deposit Bitcoin into an exchange. So there's an address, you create a transaction, you send it to the exchange. Little do you know, you're also sending potentially another crypto, such as Bitcoin Cash. So there's ways to protect against a replay attack. And a lot of these have to do with how the implementers of the change, the hard fork, choose to implement the protection. So one's called kind of mandatory replay protection. Another one is opt-in, which means it doesn't necessarily have to happen. I'll go into a little bit more details about that. So mandatory replay protection. People heard about this term a lot during the days of the upcoming pending fork with SegWit2x and Bitcoin Cash. The best analogy to mandatory replay protection is saying, let's change the format of the transaction on the new chain. And if you look at kind of the check format, that's like saying, in the old system we had the signature on the bottom right. On this new system, let's make it where you have to put the signature on the bottom left. So now when someone creates that check and signs it, they can deposit it into the old banking system, and it works, but it's not valid on the new chain. It just gets dropped as an invalid transaction. So that actually protects our funds. That means that if I want to send money on one chain, I want to send Bitcoin Cash, it's not valid on Bitcoin. If I want to send Bitcoin, it's not valid on Bitcoin Cash. And this is effectively what got implemented in the Bitcoin Cash hard fork, was mandatory replay protection. So no one lost funds in that process. However, there's this type of replay protection called opt-in, which means that transactions on one chain are valid on another in some cases, but not in others. So in this example, we've got the old chain, kind of the old banking system, standard signature on the bottom right. But the new chain might actually accept signatures either on the bottom right or the bottom left. Once again, this is just an analogy. So old transactions are actually valid on the new chain. Some transactions, such as the ones with this bottom left signature, are not valid on the above. So we have an opportunity to create certain transactions that protect our money, but there's a chance to still spend money unintentionally. Now the question is, why would someone create a fork with the potential for this replay attack, where we accidentally spend money on two chains? Well, in the case of the Bitcoin Cash hard fork, the goal of the developers, the reason why they instituted this mandatory replay protection, they protected the funds, was they're trying to create a new currency. Just downright create a new currency. Like, we're just going to create a completely new one, but airdrop the funds to the original owners of Bitcoin. That was the goal. And so that replay protection was pretty critical in achieving that goal. But with what almost happened with the SegWit2x hard fork last year was not that developers were trying to create a new currency. They were trying to change the old. And as part of changing the old, you don't want to create incompatibility. You want to be incompatible with the exchanges, the wallets, and the payment processors. So therefore, you're not going to make that check format invalid. You want to keep the validity of that old check format because you're trying to change the current currency, not create a new one. So this, at its heart, is what creates this challenge. When we want to upgrade or change a currency, we have the possibility of creating two, but with the danger of mixing transactions between one chain and another. But that's at the heart of why no replay protection was attempted during the SegWit2x hard fork, which luckily didn't go through, was because they're trying to change the currency, not create an entirely brand new one. So kind of a tip. While we're kind of months past that original kind of hard fork moment, This can happen at any point in the future, and it actually has happened a few times, but these were more different currencies. So we've seen hard forks such as, Bitcoin Cash obviously being the big first one. Now there's Bitcoin Gold, Bitcoin Diamond, Bitcoin Private, Litecoin had forked into Litecoin Cash. We're seeing that over and over again, and most of those are different currencies. They're not trying to upgrade. But at some point, Bitcoin might come across the moment where we need to upgrade Bitcoin or change it, and there could be some disagreement in the community. So the first thing that I say is, own your keys. Make sure that you own your keys no matter what kind of fork happens, whether it's a Bitcoin Cash style fork or a Segwit 2x style fork. Own your keys. I was talking to someone at a booth that we boothed at a conference right before the Litecoin Cash hard fork. And he's like, oh, I got to get my keys out of the exchange. I think he had keys in Coinbase. And the fork was happening in about 4 hours. He tried to extract out his money, but there was a 2-day delay in him being able to remove his money from the exchange. So he wasn't able to get his funds out. Since his exchange holds his keys, it is up to them to decide whether or not to give him the value of the other fork, the new fork, such as Litecoin Cash. If they choose not to give that value to him, you effectively lose out on that potential. You may have absolutely zero interest in this other fork other than to extract the value and sell it for Bitcoin or Litecoin or whatever it came from. But unless you actually own your own keys, you may not have access to that value. So we hear a lot in the security space in cryptocurrency, hey, hold your own keys. Don't leave them on an exchange. They might get hacked and lose your money. But now we have a second big reason is if you want access to any crypto that forks from the crypto you own, hold your keys. Keep them in a wallet where the keys are in your control, not in another party. So that's your first tip. One extra little tip as well to help extract your funds. So Bitcoin is a currency that is very multi-address. If anyone has used what's called an HD wallet in Bitcoin, one that actually creates multiple addresses for you to receive funds, this is done for privacy purposes, you'll notice that you may have 10, 100, 500 addresses that have money. The portability of your key from one wallet to another for all those addresses is not well standardized. In order for you to extract money in this new fork, you might have to put it in some third-party wallet, those keys into a third-party wallet that knows how to speak the language of that new currency. Doing that for 500 addresses could be very daunting. So one of the tips that we mention is spend all your money into one address. So in many wallets, that's take all your money, take one address out of your wallet, and spend all your money right back into that one address, right before the fork. And when the fork happens, you could take that one key, that one private key, and put it into some other wallet that supports that new currency and extract your money. This is exactly what we had recommended for people to do right before the Bitcoin Cash hard fork. So instead of having Bitcoin in 500 addresses, you had all your Bitcoin in one address. You could take that one key, put it in, I think it was called Electron Cash or some other wallets, and extract out the money of that Bitcoin Cash. So this is a generally good tip, is before a fork, if you want to keep those funds and make it easy to extract, spend all your money into one address. After a fork, if another fork similar to the Segwit 2x starts to come up, maybe we have to upgrade Bitcoin for security cryptography reasons. I was just talking to someone about the potential threat of quantum computing. And what happens if quantum computers become mainstay and we have the threat of being able to break public and private keys? Well, we could upgrade Bitcoin. But to the best of my knowledge, that will likely be a hard fork. Hopefully, that's a hard fork that the community will actually agree on. But if they don't, and there's a potential for a split and two different coins, then first thing I would say is don't touch your money. Leave it in the wallet, and don't try to spend it until you hear from your wallet provider. I know that sounds really kind of vague and nebulous, but your wallet provider might need some time, some days, potentially weeks, to implement some code that will help split your money across the two chains. But if you use your wallet as it stands by default and try to send money out of it after the fork, there's a good and strong likelihood that it might get spent onto two chains. And once again, that's if a fork might come about that does not have any replay protection. Right? This is, once again, the attempt at upgrading the currency, not creating two different currencies. And then another fascinating thing about these hard forks, this is kind of what I call forking is freedom, is this idea of how fascinating is it that we can actually fork money? So we've had a history of money for obviously hundreds, thousands of years, and we've had competing money where we said, okay, well, I may not like what monetary system you have, I'm going to build my own. Whether that's fiat money or gold versus silver, or shells versus gold, or gold versus paper, we can create a new money, but we've never been able to give people the same network effect, or give that money the same network effect that the previous money had. And in the case of being able to fork cryptocurrencies, you can now drop equivalent number of coins into the hands of everyone that was already in the old network. And this is fascinating from the viewpoint of true monetary competition, because you're not just competing on technology and advancements of the payment system of that money, but you're also being able to leverage that network effect right off the bat. And so while I say that this is great from a competition point of view, it's a total pain in the ass. You know, we're a wallet developer, and we have to deal with this type of stuff. And so I'm torn between the, God, this is a pain in the butt, but this is great that we can actually compete, because it gives money a fair shot. And while crypto is competing against fiat, right? It's trying to revolutionize that. It didn't have the ability to airdrop, Bitcoin in everyone's hands that had a dollar. But I think crypto itself needs fair competition. And anyone who thinks it doesn't is going to start sounding like a fiat bankster. Because really, fair competition is what gives us the best product in the end. And so this is why I say, let them fork. Let the forks begin. Now, we might find out at the very end of all of the forks and all of the different types of competition in crypto that really ends up being just a small number of what we already had, Bitcoin, Ethereum, maybe a privacy coin like Monero. But at least we've given it a fair shot. And at least we've seen what the competition has to offer and then kind of decided more fairly. And so what are we doing in the space relative to forks and securing and whatnot? So what we do at Edge is a cryptocurrency platform, an SDK that helps secure blockchain applications. So if you're building a blockchain application, accessing a decentralized smart contract on Ethereum, Cardano, whatnot, effectively you're building an app that is a complex app, but it also has a wallet inside of it. So we have a platform that allows you to secure keys in your app the same way we secure keys in our own app, which is Edge Wallet. And it's a multi-currency wallet that supports Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, everything you see on here, ERC20 tokens, Ethereum, and a few more coins have been added since I created this slide. So I think Feathercoin was added by the developers of Feathercoin, and Zcoin as well. And so if anyone here doesn't already have a mobile wallet, or even if you do and you want to try Edge, come see me after my talk, and I'd be happy to send you some cryptocurrency, especially who here does not have any crypto yet? So definitely those people I'd like to see afterwards and say, hey, I've never actually seen or held crypto or seen a transaction. Get Edge wallets in the app stores and the Play Store, create a quick account. I'll send you a little bit of crypto so you can actually feel what it's like to touch cryptocurrency. And for anyone interested in this space, I feel like if you haven't actually done or felt a transaction, you don't really know what you're getting into and what the space has to offer. And if anything, one of the things I first did when I got into crypto is buy a small amount so I cared. And then I tried to use it and seen what were the actual challenges, both user experience at the protocol level, there were in getting cryptocurrency adopted. And that's what gave me insight on, hey, what do I want to build? What do I care about? So use cryptocurrency. It's not just something to hold, it's something to actually use, and that's what we're excited about. And I think I guess that's my last slide because I can't click. Oh, yeah, you don't want to click on that. Cool, thanks a lot, everybody. And if anyone has any questions, there's no Q&A, but I'll happily answer on the side afterwards. Take care, have a good one.